Good morning. Well, happy Friday. I am so happy to see you this morning and to talk to you about some interesting stuff going on in the world. I want to talk about spring cleaning our brains. I ran across this article this morning, actually, that I thought was really interesting. And it was talking about how there's certain things that you could do that are really related to your overall wellness that could help you spring clean your brain. And I love the feeling, and I don't know if you're like me, I love the feeling of getting things clean in the spring. You know, one of the things that you do for Passover is you kind of clean your house, and then there's that traditional spring cleaning, and there's something that's cathartic about that, and doing that across your entire house. Uh, this year we didn't do as much as we have done in years past, but that really feels good. But I think that same thing, that same principle applies to your brain. And some of the things that help you spring clean your brain are different than you would think. It's not a mental process necessarily. A lot of it appears based on the science has to do with your whole body. So it has to do with taking good care of your overall well-being. And so I just thought I would share some of the things that I learned from this article. The first thing they talked about was basically that you have to exercise. And I know we all know this, but something about that exercising that makes your brain get more oxygen, and you pump that blood in there. It really makes a big difference. And one of the things they recommended was to do interval training, because when you do that interval training, it really pumps your blood fast, and that really can put a smile on your face and put endorphins in your system. So that's one thing to maybe start doing. The other one, of course, is meditation. And I always thought of meditation as being kind of a foo-foo thing, something that um, you know I don't know, they don't people only from the East do or something like that. But actually, the science is pretty strong that meditation really helps. And I really started meditating when I heard from some people that I respect who were doing it, and different types of meditation, different methods. And I do it on and off, and I'm doing it more. But there's something about clearing your mind and calming down and taking deep breaths can really help get your brain back in order and help you think more clearly. So I think that's something that, if you're not meditating, maybe try it. Or if you have meditated and maybe you're off your game a little bit, maybe get back on your game. And then the other thing is balance. This is really interesting, and I remember learning some exercises for improving your balance, because as you age, one of the worst things that can happen is if you start losing your balance more, and it requires you to do certain exercises. And so that one of the exercises is a simple one. It's called the stork move. It's when you close your eyes and you're on one leg. So that's a really good thing. But anything that helps you with your balance is really important for your brain, believe it or not. The other thing has to do with your biological clock. I know, and I don't know if you're this way or not, but I know that if I'm going to sleep at the right times and if I'm waking up at the right times, my brain is much more alert. Like today, I slept really good last night. I went to bed relatively early, got up at the right time that I normally really like to get up, because I have been getting up too early. But yeah, and that really helps you be more on your game. The next thing they talked about had to do with laughing. So sometimes if you just put on your favorite, watch some comedy, it's just really good for your brain. And also, if you kind of try to work on being more funny and witty, it really helps your brain too, because it kind of exercises a different muscle in your mind and in your brain. I like to watch, there's certain comedians that I really like, and I think that's a great way to kind of keep things going. And I have to say, my whole family is really funny. So my brother-in-law is super funny. So anytime we go out to dinner or something and we're just sitting across from each other, that's always good, because he cracks me up. And my son is hilarious. My son is absolutely hilarious. He must take after his uncle. So, and then the other thing would be just obviously your nutrition. Making good decisions and swapping things out instead of maybe having a lot of sugary ice cream. Maybe you have yogurt, things like that. And of course, there's this concept of practicing gratitude, being thankful when you wake up in the morning. Being thankful for the day and being thankful for what you have. I saw an interesting video. Actually, it was on YouTube, where there was a gentleman who was talking about how he's grateful for what he has. He was a black man. He was talking about how grateful he was for everything that he has, and how freedom is more now than ever before, and how many people of color are feeling oppressed when they're not as oppressed as they really think they are. And be grateful for what you have, and use that gratefulness to improve yourself and to do better in the world. I thought that was an awesome video. Then there's some other things that I'm just like, I'll never do that. Like, one of the things they recommended was grow your own food. I shared this out on my social media. So if you want to see that, you can look at my social media feed, and you'll see that article, Spring Cleaning Your Brain, tips on clearing out the cobwebs and hike memory and mind power. Now I want to switch a little bit gears now, talking a little bit about some interesting things I read and have been noticing about the markets. So I never thought I'd see the day that Europe was actually being more fiscally responsible than the United States. But that's actually what's happening right now. They're actually spending less money, less deficit spending than we are, the rate of deficit spending. We are actually outspending them by a pretty big margin. And what's interesting, if you look at the pandemic, when everybody's economy in the world kind of went down, obviously, and our economy went down less as a percent than Europe. And a lot of the reason why that happens is because our economy is more flexible. We have more entrepreneurial capitalism. We have more freedoms with companies and stuff like that. And corporate America can adapt, and we can be nimble. Whereas Europe has so many regulations that it's very difficult for them to respond to things like this. So, and I will tell you, it doesn't. I don't understand. I'm finding false logic in the idea that somehow, if we can become more like Europe, that we'll be better off. The reason why we went down like 6%, and they went down like 6%, and we only went down like 4%, was because of our entrepreneurial capitalism in our system, which has been slowly and repeatedly being degraded. And continuing deficit spending does not improve that. It actually makes it harder and harder and worse. So I never thought I'd see the day. One thing that's positive is if you look at a graph of how many people in the United States per 100, so as a percent, that have been vaccinated versus that in Europe, we are getting vaccinated at a much faster pace on a percent basis. So it's, apples to apples, than Europe is. And so almost 50% of our population has been vaccinated at least with one vaccine. So that's good. Now, we're not as fast along as Europe, although Israel, although Israel is a smaller country, and they were much more proactive on getting it done quickly and moving fast. I think that now that we're starting to accelerate, that's a good thing. I know travel is still a little bit weak and hard for some people, and you can get quarantined even if you're abroad. But I thought that was interesting. Now, another interesting point about the market, by the way, is on Thursday, we saw a huge VIX spread trade. And let me just explain that in English. Basically, an enormous bet against the stock market moving higher. So this bet basically says, hey, look, if volatility increases, I'm going to make money on this big bet. And if it decreases, I'll lose money. Well, when the stock market goes down, volatility tends to rise pretty dramatically. So this is a big negative bet. And then anecdotally, I've had people in the business contact me saying, hey, I see negative tops in the market, things like that. Usually when that happens, it's wrong. So I would just my gut feel, it feels like that it's not going to happen as people are planning. Probably what we'll have is some digestion and then a move higher. That's my guess if we wanted to speculate on that. What else did I see? Oh yeah, another interesting thing is, the Chinese companies that are considered ADRs, American Depository Receipts. They are Chinese companies that are allowed to trade on U.S. exchanges, so they get a lot of privilege. They raise a lot of capital from the U.S. by having that privilege. Well, in December, we passed a law that said that these companies need to follow the standards that our companies do with audits, right? Audits in the United States are a lot more stringent than most countries. Our financial system and investors should be extremely happy about this. Our system is actually very, very strong compared to the rest of the world. I think Europe's is pretty strong too, and we do have some international standards. But anyhow, this is something that the Chinese corporations and the government most likely will never do. At least that's what the analysts are saying. So assuming they're right, then that would force many of these companies to delist, and they'll wind up being traded somewhere else, maybe in Hong Kong or something like that. So that might affect some of the capital raise that these Chinese companies will be able to do. But it also begs the question, what are these companies trying to hide? Or are they trying to hide something? Or is it just the principle that I don't want to be audited by the United States? I don't know the answer to that, but I have a funny suspicion that there's probably a lot of things within some of these Chinese companies that we would really not want to know. So I may be wrong, and maybe I'm being overly skeptical. But anyhow, that's all I have for you today. I hope you're having a great day. And that is all for now. We'll talk to you later.